So, John, what does all this mean? There's many people that thought, and I'm going to ask your expertise opinion on this,
Sure.
is that given the situation of this case, and man, Joni's flowing hair and his good looks, that somehow that there could have been somebody on that jury that would have returned a not guilty, based that it just takes one person. What is your conjecture when it comes to that ideology?
Well, you're right. It only takes one juror to hang up a jury and declare a mistrial. The evidence here was pretty overwhelming, and I certainly think that for whatever reason he didn't want to face a state trial, so he decided, okay, I'll take my chances by pleading guilty to the federal charges and make a double jeopardy argument, which is exactly what his attorneys are going to do.
So by doing this, what does he gain for himself? Because in the eyes of the people that now know this course, he says in cold blood, he stalked this guy. He 3D printed a gun and then bought other gun parts to do this. He knew what he did. He was clear conscious the morning. He said he wasn't on any drugs when he did it. He wasn't on any drugs when he put in his plea of guilty here. So what is his position here? What's he trying to do? Does this guy ever see outside prison walls again?
Well, it's possible. As you just said, the sentencing guidelines for the federal charges, he pled guilty to 2 federal charges, we should discuss those in a moment, is 24 to 30 years. Now, because this was a stalking charge that resulted in death, the potential penalty is life in prison. Still, life in a federal penitentiary may be better than life in a state penitentiary. And we'll see what Judge Margaret Garnett says when she sentences him on December the 18th. He did this, I'm pretty sure, just to avoid the state trial. And we can talk about the arguments he's going to make if you'd like.
Talk about those arguments in that trial.
Sure. Well, you've got to be very particular about what he was charged with. So he pled guilty in the federal case to 2 charges, one of interstate stalking that resulted in death, and one count of cyber stalking through the use of interstate facilities that resulted in death. Those were the 2 charges. In New York, he has been charged by Alvin Bragg's office with second-degree murder, a handful of firearms offenses, and forgery of a driver's license. Now, normally, when it comes to making a double jeopardy argument, the federal government, for instance, the U.S. Constitution, recognizes what's referred to as a dual sovereignty doctrine, which is to say, hey, federal government is one sovereign, the state is a separate sovereign, no problem. They can try him twice. So Derek Chauvin, for instance, after murdering George Floyd, was convicted of both state charges and federal charges in Minnesota. New York, however, has an interesting wrinkle. Under New York's Constitution, and more specifically Article 40 of New York's Criminal Procedure Code, they don't recognize the dual sovereignty doctrine. They say basically a person cannot be separately prosecuted for 2 different offenses based upon the same act or criminal transaction, unless the offenses have completely different elements and prevent distinct harms. So Mangione's attorney is going to go in and say, no, look, this is all one big act. He went out, he shot the guy outside the Manhattan hotel, and he murdered him. And Bragg is going to say, no, that was a cyber stalking charge. It happened to result in death, but that prevents one kind of harm. That's very different from murder, and certainly very different from firearms and, falsifying a forgery charge. And that's what the judge is going to have to analyze, whether or not these are distinct charges, whether the charges prevent very different kinds of harm or evil. It's a tough slog, I think, for Mangione to make, but it's not impossible. So, for example, in 2019, a New York judge threw out the state case against, Trump supporter Paul Manafort.
Right.
The attorney, by the way, was current Attorney General Todd Blanche, because he said, well, the state charges for mortgage fraud and falsifying business records, they really involve the same conduct as federal bank fraud charges. Manafort had already pled guilty to those federal charges. So Mangione's got a decent shot at getting the state case thrown out, but we'll see.
This is John Malcolm. Nick, we need to have his cell number on Friday nights when we go out, because you never know. We could use this kind of expertise in our corner. Former assistant U.S. attorney in Atlanta. Well, I want to talk about this second-degree murder charge, because I got a text message, why second degree? And you correct me if I'm wrong. You're the attorney. I'm just asking the questions. That's a murder that's committed without malice, recklessness, or planning or premeditation. Wouldn't stalking somebody and coming across state lines, wouldn't that take a certain amount of planning?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked into particulars about what the elements are for second-degree murder versus first-degree murder. Certainly this was premeditated. I mean, he figured out where Brian Thompson was going to be. He even called United Healthcare to find out where this conference was going to be held, where Brian Thompson was attending. And he traveled across states in disguises with weapons and gunned him down in cold blood. So I don't know what the decision-making was there. The second-degree murder charge still carries a 25 years to life sentence. And I have to believe that if he goes to trial for that and is convicted, he will, in fact, get a life sentence.
Do you, when you look at this, if you're the attorney, you're prosecuting this case, would you have taken this deal that they came up with? Do you there's a lot of people that were like, oh, there's no doubt this guy's going to get life. But on Friday, there was people saying, no, this defense attorney, this was a win for Mangione. They did good by him. Would you concur to that?
Well, they created the possibility that he might see life outside of a prison cell one of these days. Again, the evidence was overwhelming against him, so I don't know what his defense would have been. Maybe it was, gee, one of my many admirers who've been sending me love letters will somehow sneak their way onto the jury and hang the jury up. Yeah. But I can't fault what his defense counsel did here. They've at least created the possibility that they can make an argument that, after 30 years or 24 years, Mangione's only 28 years old, that maybe when he hits getting around 60, he'll be able to get out of a prison cell.
You're the defense. I'm going to make you presuppose. You're the defense. You're the defense. You're defending Luigi Mangione. He comes to you and he says, you know what? Here's my defense. My back hurt. And I think people will sympathize with, people have been on the line with insurance companies for hours and hours before. They know my pain. Is that something that you would have said? Yeah, sounds like a good idea. Would you said, no, that doesn't necessarily hold water?
Well, it's certainly not a legally viable defense. However, it's a sympathy defense. And, you never know what's going to change a jury's mind. If you get up there and said, yes, I had severe back pain, I had unbelievable difficulty navigating the health insurance system. I spoke to dozens of people who had the exact same complaints. Yeah. And, to quote the old movie Network, I was mad as hell and I wasn't going to take it anymore.
Right. Wow. But you guys, this is why there's so many of those attorney commercials on TV, because you guys, you know what you're doing when it comes to, to getting people either in or out of trouble. John, I appreciate you. Thank you.